good, and for a change, I'm not here to do something funny for you, but I'm doing something for anybody who's considering recording and needs a wireless microphone. I'm specifically thinking about the comedians because it's a very handy thing to have. Now, if you are somebody just starting out in comedy, or maybe you've been doing it for a little while, one of the best things you can do for yourself is to at least audio tape what you are doing. And you can do that just sitting your cell phone down, hitting record, and it'll record yourself. You can listen to yourself later on. You can hear where the laughs are. You can guide yourself accordingly. And that's a real positive thing. And a lot of new comics don't do that, which is a shame, because after you get off stage, even if you're a good comic, you can't remember where the laughs were and where the strength of the laughs were either. That's a big deal. You want to hear where the pity laughs are, where you got to really work on it, or where it's a good, decent sort of a laugh, it's a good joke, you keep hearing it over and over again. However, if you take it to the next step and you videotape yourself, there's a lot of pluses to that. For instance, you can then see the nuances that you have on there, the facial expressions, body language. These things can all impact onto the material that you're doing, and you might be able to identify, well, geez, I'm doing this and it doesn't really work, or geez, I look really well dressed and I'm talking about what a bum I am. No, these you can't necessarily pick that up, but when you look at a video, it becomes really apparent. Now, I got into recording videos because of Manolis Zontanos. Manolis has been doing comedy forever. He's worked across Canada, and he's a really good comic. And I noticed that despite him being, doing this forever and a day, he kept videotaping himself every time I see him at a show. And I asked him about it, and he said, well, the thing is that when you videotape yourself, you can find something that you can put on YouTube or on the social media to essentially promote yourself. And what I've realized since is not only does that work for that particular instance, but if you want to get a show maybe in another city where maybe the booker isn't familiar with you, then if you've got a YouTube video and it's a good, clean, reasonably professional looking video, they can see who you are. And the more professional you look, the more confidence they're going to have in you. So if you do something where you're just recording off the microphone that's on your iPhone or your cellular phone, whatever the case it may be, and the sound's a little hollow and ringy and this, that, and the other thing, you're not going to look really professional. So the more professional you look, the better it's going to be for you. It's also good if you're entering any contests or you want to get into something like Just for Laughs. They usually require you to, particularly if you're starting out, to provide them with a link to a video so they can see exactly who you are and what you're doing, and then they will then hopefully invite you to the next step in that particular process. So I went out looking for a wireless lavalier microphone in order to record myself with my cell phone. And what I settled on was the Samson, that's like Samson and Delilah, not Samsung. I had another comic ask me for a recommendation, and he thought that I just kind of had an autocorrect on Samsung or something. It's been a really good unit. I've used it maybe 50 to 100 times. It does have some quirks and quirks that I'd like to make you conscious of. And so I'm just going to take you through it and how it works and why I use it and what have you. Now, one of the reasons I use it for is price. This particular unit, when I bought it on Amazon about a year and a half ago, was $249. Now, I recently checked on Amazon to see if it was still available, but it is not. They're showing it as going to be coming back. We're self-isolating right now because of COVID-19, so I'm thinking that this might be something that's going on, that they're having trouble getting supplies from China. The company that distributes them in North America is out of New Jersey, and in Canada, it's actually a company out of Quebec. I think it's in Montreal. It's a music store, so that's who does it. And so that's where you kind of have to go for that kind of a thing. The other reason I went with this one is when I started doing research, I'm using a iPhone 8 Plus. Now, when you hit the 8 Pluses, the 10s, the 11th, and all the ones subsequent to that, there's no longer a jack for the headphone. It's all completely wireless. All you've got is the lightning connector that's on the bottom. I'm showing you the bottom? No, there's the bottom. Right there. And you have to have a way to connect into that. Now, the beauty of the Samson is that they have the transmitter, which I just showed you briefly, a receiver, which I'm going to get to later, and from the receiver, there's a cord that goes into your unit. And they provide a number of different cords to do that with. Most of them are USB type cords. They do have one that goes from, it's an analog cord, which would go into the little headphone jack here and into the headphone jack on your phone. So that would make that work for you. So it all will come together. You'll be fine with that. And I like that because if you don't have something like that, then you ended up with a jury-rigged system with a bunch of different patch cords that were kind of going from this to this to this to this, and you run the risk of it breaking down somewhere along the line and you have really bad sound or just no sound whatsoever. So I went with the Samson. I have to say, for the most part, I'm really happy with it. I continue to use it. I've used it, as I say, 50 to 100 times, I would say, at this point in time. I have had a couple of issues with it, and I'll get to that as we go along. It has a good range. It will record up to 100 feet away from the stage, direct line of sight. Won't go into another room and do that. That's usually good enough for most of the places I have played. Levity here in Hamilton, Yuck Yucks, Rhapsody Barrel Bar for Blackball Comedy, Absolute, any of those places, you'll find this more than good enough. I don't suppose it's going to be big enough if I'm playing Massey Hall, but if I'm playing Massey Hall, I probably can afford something a little bit better. So anyways, a good little unit, I like it. So let's talk about how this works. Well, we start off, we've got the lavalier microphone, lav mic as they call it. You may notice I've got a kind of a flesh-toned windsock on it. It came with a black one. I lost the black one. Bit of an issue there. So what I did is I went down to Long and McQuaid, who's my local music store people, and for about $2 or $3, they sold me a couple of them. And what I do now is I take this unit, I always leave it plugged in, wrap it up, I put it in the plastic bag, so if it falls off, it's there. That's where my spare one is as well. So it's a good way to handle that. Highly recommend it. Now the unit itself, you have to turn it on, obviously to make it work. If it is working, you'll see a green light on the end there. I don't know if you can see it. If I turn it off, it's going to knock off. Connection has been made. Everything's good. Now, if I've got any comment to make about it, it has to do with the microphone. Most of the microphones I've looked at, because I've considered buying one separately, use the earphone jack like that to plug into, the analog. And this unit does it. It uses, I think it's a 3-prong thing. It's a big, really heavy thing. But I don't find the cable here particularly robust. And I have had a few issues with it going with kind of a crackle or just a little interruption in the flow of the thing. Nothing gigantic. It certainly doesn't bother me when I am watching it, but to me, I'd want better than that if I'm trying to record it for submission to somebody. So what I tend to do is I put it in my pocket here. I will coil this up. I will tape it onto the unit itself. It reduces the length of the cord, reduces the amount of motion that can go on. It tends to work a little bit better, I'm finding. The unit itself takes 2 AA batteries in the transmitter. And one thing I do regret is I wish these were rechargeable, so you just plug it in. The receiver, when we do get to it, it does plug in the recharge, and it has a thing on there that you can tell when the battery is getting low on it. As a matter of fact, this is the 4th time I've recorded this, because I've been kind of messing around with some things, and I noticed on the last one that I was having some difficulties, and that was because it was flashing red. It was, Jim, you need to go out and plug me in. So I use these, but I do change them fairly frequently. Now, the one other thing that's you need to know about that's in here is that there's this little blue dotty thing right there. Right over there. There it is. That is actually your gain. And if you're somebody in bands, I'm pretty sure, or audio big time, you know, it seems to be a type of sensitivity. What will happen is if you have it turned up all the way, and particularly if it's too close to your mouth, and you say something too loud, it will distort your voice. It won't be clean and crisp and clear. If you've ever watched any of these programs where they're showing the audio levels going up and down, you'll see it's all green or sometimes amber. Then all of a sudden it'll flip into red. Red is not where you want to be, because that is causing clipping, that is causing the distortion. So you get into it a little bit, and that's too bad, but it's not terribly bad if that happens. But I found a quarter turn down roughly, and boom, I had a problem with it. The problem disappeared. That windsocky thing here that I talked about putting on here too, that's also a good idea to have on. I did try recording it a couple times without it. I found that the sound was not quite as good. I don't know why, to be honest with you, because it's just stopping all that kind of windy things going in there. Um, is there anything else I needed? There was something else that was in the top of my mind and I wanted to say about the microphone. And I just can't really think of anything of what it was. So I guess we're just going to move on from here. So that is that particular unit. Now, I am going to unplug the receiver from my iPad, which is how I'm recording this, which means that the sound level is going to change. Where I am right now is somewhat cavernous. We've got a cathedral ceiling and a lot of hard surfaces. So when I unplug, you will hopefully hear the difference between recording it like this and just recording it, what have you. As a matter of fact, I should maybe just make a comment about that. You can, as I said, record this just using your microphone that's on your cell phone, and you will get some fairly decent quality. But if you're in a room that doesn't have a good sound system, and unfortunately I do see that from time to time, they're not always as sterling as we would like them to be, all you're going to do is record bad sound. Bad sound that is then hampered by the fact that you're doing it from the back of the room and it just doesn't work out. When you're doing this, it's picking you up directly. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. This is an omnidirectional phone. That means microphone. It's picking sound up that goes down this way. So it does tend to, supplementary sounds can be eliminated. It does, however, pick up the laughter I have found, whether it's bouncing around the room and what have you, and that is critical because you really want to be able to hear that. But the good thing about this particular unit is you could take a stick microphone, the kind of thing you hang in your hold in your hand. Samson makes it for this particular unit, and you can actually run two of them through the receiver. So technically what you can do is take the stick microphone, set it down up on a stand off to the side, record the laughter from there, your voice from here, bing, bang, boom. And there is a way to separate the sounds and everything if you wanted to kind of work them as separate channels. I never do because I never use it. So you get stuck with my theory of how to do things. Before I do unplug this, I'm going to say that in mounting this unit with the phone, I have tried to do it as well with this, which is a gimbal, which allows you to kind of move around and what have you. And I have had an issue with the with trying to plug this particular microphone in because it has to go in through the lightning connector. And how this mounts on this particular unit, the lightning connector is actually hard up against, all over the place here, hard up against the end here. It means you can't get access to the lightning connector. What I tried to do is get an L-shaped lightning connector to come down, and I had to counterweight it with a couple of loonies. It was a real pain in the derriere. Today what I use is this. It's a selfie stick essentially. It goes down really small for me. Yeah, it can go up high. It can open up as a tripod. It works really well. I'm going to mount this on here later just so you can see how the whole configuration goes, because when you get it, you're going to think I can just hold on to it like this. There is a clip that goes on and whatnot, but if you want some stability out of your performance, it's better to put it onto a tripod. I'll show you how to do that in just a little bit. So I've come to that part of the promotion. There's nothing being promoted here but me, good looking, handsome, funny. My instructional video. I'm going to unplug the unit and hopefully you will hear the difference, and I'll still be good enough for you to hear because I probably won't replug this in again until we're finished. Anyway, I've unplugged the receiver unit, and you do have a number of options here. These arms up here allow it to hook onto the back of my iPhone, and I'm going to demonstrate that in a little while. But it also has some other things that you can do. They've got connections. So if you got a cold shoe on a video camera and you wanted to hook it up onto there, you can do that just so it's not wibbling and wobbling all over the place. You don't want to have that. On the side, I am hooked into the USB connector, which goes to a lightning connector, which goes into my phone or into my iPad, as the case may be. Down below is the headphone jack connector. Plug that into there. That's analog, not digital. I don't know whether it's going to make a huge difference in the sound quality, but just be aware of it. That third thing downstairs, well, that's just so you can plug this unit in and charge it up. You will have on the front the green light, meaning that it's turned on. The white light over here, meaning that it's connected to this unit, which is handy because you've got this unit up here. If it goes amber, then you know it's no longer connected. If that light goes off, you know it's no longer connected. So it can kind of give you that kind of information. Up at the top, you can decide whether to record on channel 1, channel 2, or there's a mix headphone, whatever. This up at the top is strictly for the analog. So if you're using digital, which I think most people today will be, then that's pretty much irrelevant. What is not irrelevant is this volume switch. Oh, I guess right in the middle. That's the on and off switch right there. So there, on and off switch. There's a volume control underneath. And I have discovered, I was doing a video for a YouTube thing, and I recorded, and I had it slid down to the lower end of the extreme, and I didn't realize it was going to make a difference. I should have. That's stupid now that I think about it. What happened is it recorded at a lower level. I could hear it, but it wasn't as loud as everything else that I had been done when I edited it together. And I could bounce it up about 200% louder, but it still didn't get in line with everything else. I'd have to lower it, and it was all too low. I basically ended up re-recording everything because it's the better way to go. Down here you have two modes. One is that you can have it a mix, which means it's all coming out in mono. It's all coming out with one channel. Or you go two, which brings it out on two channels, a left and a right. I guess you could use that if you were using the microphone that's on the stage, the stick microphone, and you wanted to control the level of the laughter on that. You wanted to control the vocal, your speech, your routine. You could do that in whatever program you're doing your thing in. Now that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward and it's pretty simple. So let me just show you how I hook this up, because this can become a bit of a deal. My camera's over on this side. My plug is on this side. So what I do is I take this, slide it over to the side as much as I can. There is a little Dewey here. Where are you? Oh, right up here. Which you can loosen it and tighten it to whatever size you've got. Make it nice and handy. I'll then take my unit, and if I look a little clumsy with this, it's because my wife does all of this stuff. She's my tech crew. She knows what she's doing, and she does a good job of it. So that's sincere, by the way. I'm not saying it just in case she watches this. So once it's up on there, that, plug this lightning connector into the lightning connector on my phone. Come on. All of a sudden I've lost that ability. Well, not important. It does plug in. It's not a big deal. You're just looking at an old man with a lot of shaky hands. So what do I think about this overall? I think it's pretty good. They call it the Pro. I don't know that it's quite that at that kind of price. It doesn't maybe have some of the abilities to do things that the Sennheisers, for instance, would do. I've used them doing TV commercials and shows. Oh, there we go. And a Sennheiser is definitely a professional unit. The difference is, as of the time I bought this, the Sennheiser did not have an easy, here's how we plug it into an iPhone from Apple. You had to do a bunch of patch cords and stuff like that. And the problem with patch cords is that the more connections you make, the more potential you have for breakdown of the sound, or even accidentally disconnecting it, and you're kind of snookered at that point. Now, I did have one problem with my receiver unit. It worked fine when I got it. Within the first year, there was a problem. I will say for them, I contacted Amazon, who sent me on to the company in New Jersey, who sent me on to the company in Canada, who in turn went back to New Jersey. I literally got a replacement one day later. It was a minor nuisance, a bit of a nuisance. I'm not going to say it wasn't. But since I got the new one, I haven't had any problems. This unit I've used 50 to 100 times. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Not everything, but a lot of what I record and put on YouTube, any of my routines and whatnot, you're going to hear what I'm dealing with there. Just as I think here, you probably would have heard the difference when I switched over. That's one of the unique things, I wouldn't say unique thing, I guess, but interesting things is that if something does happen to this unit, it does not mean you totally lose what you did. It just means that it kind of knocks off and defaults to the microphone that's on your iPad or your iPhone, whatever you're recording on. So that will be that. Do I have anything else to say? No, I think it's a good unit. It's not on a pro level. I don't think I could seriously say that. And I think the problem really, as I say, is I think the weird thing with Apple is that they have repeatedly improved their camera technology to the point now that they're pretty darn good. You can do 4K and whatnot on them. But they have made no allowances for other audio inputs, which means if you're trying to do something, they like to say you can make a first run movie using just your phone, and the quality level will be pretty high, but the audio level won't, because you can't hook audio up into it. At least I haven't seen anything at an affordable price. So I think that's about all I've got to say about this. If you are considering going with a wireless microphone, the Samson is a reasonable price. The Sennheisers will run you $1,000 to $1,500, and if you get into the first-rate pro jobbies, they're going to be $2,000 to $3,000. That's pretty far out there. But yeah, go ahead, buy it. See what you look like. I bet you're funny as hell. Take care.